Today on Hands On Photography, I have some feedback from you, the loyal Hands On Photography listener. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And it just warms my heart, some of the stuff you all say. Y'all stay tuned.
This is TWiT.
No ads, just the content. That's what you get when you join Club TWiT. You even get extras like TWiT Plus, our new bonus feed just for members, and exclusive access to the Club TWiT Discord community. Join now for just $7 a month and support TWiT as we continue to create top-notch podcasts you expect and deserve. We're just getting started, so be one of the first to join as we build Club TWiT from the ground up. You could be an early member. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit to learn more and sign up now. Thanks.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Ant Pruitt, and this is Hands On Photography here on TWiT TV. Hope y'all are doing well. I am unbelievable as always. As I've said 113 times before, this is the podcast where I like to sit down and share different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and a better post processor. I love doing this each and every Thursday, and it really does mean a lot when I hear back from you all that's sharing all of your different tips and tricks and progress. So just keep sending it on in. If this is your first time catching the show, welcome to you. Go ahead and subscribe in whatever podcast app you're enjoying this on. Check out all the information on our website. That is twit.tv/hop. That's twit.tv/HOP for Hands On Photography. Check out all the previous episodes, all of the show notes, all of our guests. There's a lot of nuggets there. So I highly recommend you going all the way back and starting from the beginning, because I had a good time just sort of layering up on all of the episodes, trying to help people learn this wonderful world of photography and get better at it. So with that out of the way, this is a feedback show. I got a couple pieces of feedback. One is going to be private. I didn't put their name on it because I didn't get consent, but I still think it's something that's worth mentioning. So I have removed their name for privacy concerns, and we're just going to talk about it as a general topic. All right. So let's go ahead and pull up that first bit of feedback. All right, so this email comes in. It's basically talking about our landscape photography tips I shared way back when, where I talked about the best time to shoot landscape photography. Mr. Victor will pull up that episode right now on the screen, and I'll link to it in our show notes as well. But yeah, the listener viewer says, "Hey, Ant, enjoyed the most recent episode, and the concept of shooting before or after a storm makes so much and is something I've never tried. I was wondering if you might cover something at some point here about setting up the foreground for your landscape shots. This is where I always seem to fall flat. I'll photograph a beautiful vista, but then there really isn't any depth because I just don't seem to know how to find stuff for the foreground. Thanks for what you do." And you know what? That email is that's great. I really do appreciate this one, because a lot of people tend to think that a landscape photograph is just all about a beautiful wide vista. And yeah, there is something to that. But what really makes the great landscape photographs stand out for people, and all of our great photographers of history, they all have layers. They all have depth. They have something in the foreground that is captivating. There's always something in the middle area that's captivating, and then there's something further back that really draws you in, whether it be a big tree or a mountain range or the sun or the moon or something. There's always some type of depth. There's always layers in that beautiful vista. And unfortunately, sometimes it doesn't quite work out that way for everybody when they go out to shoot for landscape. Sometimes you get out there and you see these beautiful mountain ranges, and then you look right around at your feet and so forth, and there's just nothing there. It's just grass. And yeah, that happens. But I have a tip for you. If you're trying to create depth in your landscape shot and need something that's to be in that foreground and middle ground, there's two tricks actually. And one of them is just a little bit sort of off the wall, but it works. First, if you're trying to find something for your foreground, go grab it and place it there. It's that simple. I don't care if it's some type of interesting piece of wood, twigs or something like that, a stone, a couple of stones, anything. It just depends on what your scene is. If you have a shot framed up that you just absolutely love and you just notice that it's just missing that depth, but you happen to look behind you and see an interesting, I don't know, stone or an interesting bench or something, if you're able to, safely able to, move those objects into your scene. Pick them up, sit them down right there into your scene. And that's going to help give you some visual interest right there in the foreground. And it's going to draw the viewer's eye from there on through your photograph. So just, it's as simple as that. Find something and put it there. Just don't make it too distracting, but something that's just interesting enough. You know, I'm not saying go out there and stick a can of paint in the middle of your scene, because that's just totally off the wall and really, really distracting and will take away from your photograph. But just use your own judgment. Don't go out there damaging nature or anything like that. Just be smart and just take into effect the things that's going on around you, even if it's as simple as a couple different leaves in the foreground. Something, there's always something out there that can help. So you just have to, you know, put your eyeglasses on and take a look around and set up your shot. Okay. So now my next tip. This is something that I had to learn over time, and it was sort of beaten to my head, if you will, by some of my colleagues and friends that was helping me get rolling with photography back in the days. And it's really, really easy. Just get down. Just get down. If you think back to our episode with Miss Lisa Carney, she talked about shooting landscape photography and shooting images with her smartphone, her iPhone in particular. And one of her comments to me was, hey, line up the shot and get the bleep down. And just get down. And she's 100% right. So if you're looking at a scene, staring at a mountain range, like here I am in the area near where I live. It's a beautiful Petaluma Mountains back here, and it looks great. And as I'm standing there, that's all it is. It's just the mountain. But the second I just squat down with my camera, you know, it starts to change the perspective and make it even more interesting. And if I can get down on the ground, I have the blades of grass in front of me, and it's continuing to just create depth the lower I get to the ground. I'm not saying you have to absolutely lie on the ground, but it doesn't hurt. So play with your point of view, play with the angles that you have to help create that depth, because sometimes it's not just going to be at eye level. I promise you're going to see a difference. All right. I hope that helped. Okay, so we have some more feedback that I want to go over and pick through some things here with that feedback. But first, we're just going to pause for a few seconds for a quick break. All right, so now we have another piece of feedback that was emailed to me. Let's go ahead and pull that up on the screen. Okay, this one says, "Hi, Ant. Hope you are staying well." Thank you. I am. Let me first start off saying that I am by no means any kind of photographer and really wanted to learn anything about the subject due to my daughter taking a photography class in school over here in the UK. Man, that's so awesome. There's someone in the UK listening to our show, Mr. Victor. How about that? In order to support her, I thought I had better learn at least something about the subject, which is where I started watching Hop. Thank you so much for that. The message continues. I have to say, I've learned a lot watching and listening to your tutorials on everything from episode 1 onward. And it has inspired me to, if not take up the hobby professionally, at least when I'm out and about, actually look at what I'm doing when I'm taking a picture. The link below is just a couple of images that I took as a result of applying what I think I've learned from you and putting it into practice. Like I said earlier, I am not any kind of photographer and only have my OnePlus 9 Pro camera with me at all times to take a shot of anything. I was quite pleased how these pictures came out, as it was just a spur of the moment idea, but I did put into practice some of the ideas you have spoken about. Grid lines on the horizon, things like that. Attaboy. And I had no kind of post editing whatsoever. I'm just getting my head around taking photos. Editing them is the next logical step. Excellent. The message continues. For me to continue to learn, I would appreciate your thoughts on it. composition, framing, and general setup, and what, if anything, you would do in post to improve these photos. I understand that this may not get on the show. That's where you're wrong, sir, and I'm fine with that. But if you have the time, I would still love to have your feedback on the pictures so I can continue to learn and improve and keep surprising my daughter from time to time. You are free to use the pictures as you see fit and comment on them as much or as little as you like. Thanks for all of your work. That comes from Mr. David Anthony Ogden. Ooh, boy. Yeah. Now this is awesome. This is one of the things that really does just fire me up regarding doing hands-on photography each and every week. Feedback like this that says, hey, you know what? You helped just spark an interest in photography. And heck, I don't have the fancy smancy $5,000, $6,000 camera, but I do have one of these. I do have a phone, and this thing can work. So I'm going to go out here and shoot. Thank you for that. So yeah, folks, I really do appreciate y'all just diving in and taking a chance. And it looks like most of you are really enjoying the experience of getting out and learning photography. So thank you, Mr. David. I have these images. I looked at them briefly, but I'm going to do this somewhat live, if you will, far as my thoughts on them. Okay, so let's go ahead and pull it up inside of Lightroom here. All right, so landscape, and he mentioned in there that he took into account things such as the horizon line. And right out the gate, I'm looking at it and thinking, yep, he definitely did. So, sir, you're going to get points for that. I'm going to double check just to be sure. And yep, yeah. I just barely nudged it to line it up. So kudos to you on getting that lined up right there in camera. Nice work. Okay, so now, again, we're looking at landscape, and we talked about having depth in these landscape images. And we have it here. We have a foreground, we have a middle ground, and then we have all the way back off in the horizon at the vanishing point, that range of mountains there. All right. The problem that I have with this is the points of interest. It looks like the points of interest would be right here, dead center in the image. So let's figure out a way to bring that out a little bit more. You can do so by cropping. You can do so by doing selective editing on this area. But I'm just going to do some general touch up on it just to get started, and then we'll dive into it a little bit more. So from an exposure standpoint, I think this is fine. It's not overexposed. It's not underexposed. My preference is to bring down the exposure just a touch, like so. Okay. And then maybe even play around with the highlights. Let's see, if I push the highlights too much, watch what happens. Okay, so it brought up the clouds a little bit more, but this area over here on these leaves look a little bit washed out. So I'm just going to take it back about halfway there. So now we still have some decent looking cloud detail, and we also have decent detail here in the trees and right here on these leaves. So that looks pretty good. And then let's play around with the color on it, the vibrance. So we'll push the vibrance up just a smidge, not too much. Looking good. Saturation. Yeah, we'll leave the saturation as is. So again, it's not too much to do with from a post processing on this. The exposure was good and the color was good and your alignment was good. But framing, that's the next thing. So if you can't get it right in camera, then that's when you need to turn on your cropping tool and whatever piece of software you're using to process the image. I highly recommend using Lightroom Mobile on your phone. It's free. There's a free version, I should say. There's also a paid version if you have the Creative Cloud subscription. But the free version of Lightroom Mobile works really, really good on the phones, or Snapseed. And they offer you all of these same tools that I'm using right now. I would crop this a little bit more. I'm still going to have a decent foreground, but I think all of this over here on the left-hand side, I don't think that adds to the image. I think just cutting it down a little bit makes it look a lot better and a lot more focused, if you will. So I'm going to crop it to there. Yeah, I think that's a much stronger image. And you still have the depth of the foreground, you have the middle ground, and you have the horizon off in the distance. And if you want, you can scroll all the way down here and do a little bit of vignette on here, because the vignette is really going to force the eyes to focus towards the center of the frame off into the distance. So let's just do a little vignette here like that. I love that. Hey, totally usable image there. You could print that and put it up on your wall somewhere, sir. You really could. Now, let's move on to the next image. This image here, okay, another landscape. All right, let's check the horizon, because you know I'm going to have to check your work, sir. Horizon is just a touch off, not too much. So I still give you some points. You nice work. So we got the horizon squared away. All right, this image is, when I first look at it, the immediate thing that comes to my mind is haze. And haze is good in some images, but not all images. And right here, I think the haze is a little overpowering and takes away from the beautiful horizon line and the mountains there in the distance here. Okay, so let's work on that haze. And inside of Lightroom, you have a dehaze option. And then there's other things that you can use, such as just pulling down highlights or using selective editing with like gradient tools and things like that. But I'm going to start with general exposure first off, like we did on the other image. I'm going to pull back the exposure just a touch. Okay, not too much, just a touch. Okay, play around with the highlights. I'm gonna pull them down some. If I pull them down all the way, it does look better, but it almost looks a little dead too. So I'm going to take that and push the highlights back up just a touch. Now, if you notice our histogram over here, okay, there's a big spike in the highlights area for blue. And that's because of the sky. It's definitely a bit overexposed over there. So you can play around with that by going to your curves tool and just sort of dragging that blue channel down just a little. But, you know, it all depends on you and your taste. I'm not going to pull it down too much. Let's see. I'll put a point right here. And I'm just going to barely move it, because I think it's okay. The histogram is just a guide to help you out. You don't necessarily have to say, hey, this is the gospel, if you will, but it is definitely a guide and it helps you see where things are clipping. So I'm gonna leave it right there far as our blue goes. Next, we'll go back and play around with our saturation and vibrance just to get the color good to go. And we're pushing that vibrance up and it looks pretty good. Okay, so now let's get back to the meat of the problem, the haze. All right, so there's a couple ways you can handle this inside of Lightroom. There's this dehaze slider here. If I slide it all the way to the left, this is going to add haze to the overall image. Okay, so I'm gonna slide it all the way to the left. So it looks like now we just have a big mess of fog or smog right over the top of the image. We don't want that. So if I slide it to the right, it's going to try to take it away, whatever haze that seems to exist in the image. So I'm just going to take it over to the right just a little. And as I do that, watch this area here. Watch the clouds and see how the detail starts to come into the clouds. So I'm just going to move it just a little. There we go. See, now we have actual cloud formation, and we can also see these mountains a lot more, you know, a little bit more clear there off in the distance. So I don't want to take it too much, just a little less there. There we go. So that's one way to fix that haze. Let me reset it. And there's another tool in a lot of photo editors. And it's called a gradient tool or gradient map, not a gradient map, a gradient filter. Here, Lightroom has changed up how they laid them out. So it's called linear gradient. And all I'm going to do is drag down on this image, something like this. And if you notice, it has this red overcast on it, this little red overlay. That red is the areas that's going to be affected by this filter. And because it's a graduated or a gradient filter, the effect is going to be stronger up here at the top of the filter, less so down here at the bottom. So it's a gradual effect. Okay. So if I wanted to just knock down the exposure, it's going to knock it down, but it's really going to affect that top area. Okay. So this is really, really extreme. We don't want to do that. I was just trying to show an example there. So let's reset that. We want to take this filter and work again with the highlights and the dehazing option there. So let's push that dehaze a little bit like so. That looks pretty good. Yeah. And if we want to play with the highlights, we can add the highlights back while cutting that haze, or we can decrease the highlights. So I'm just going to add it back just a touch. Something like that there. Not bad. And as I zoom in on this, let me turn this off for a second. As I zoom in on this, it looks a little like it's got some fringing. Hold on. Got my wrong zoom. There we go. It's like there's a little bit of fringing going on here, a little bit of artifacting. We can fix that just by trying to soften up the sky, because your sky doesn't need to be really, really sharp. It's the sky. It's clouds. Clouds don't need like rough edges, in my opinion. So we're going to go back to that same filter that we were using. Okay. And if I hit this, we can see that I'm working more so on the sky at the top, not necessarily down here at the bottom. So we're going to take that top area and we're going to decrease the sharpness in it. So let's soften it up some. And then there's this noise slider here. This noise slider, when you increase it, it smooths it out some too. Like that. And then you have the texture and clarity sliders. Let's decrease those too, because all of those are just giving edges to your image, and we don't want that. So let's pull that back. And again, this is in any tool that you're using, some form of graduated filter, some form of just going in and selectively adjusting the sky, just softening things up and making it look more like the natural sky, and not so much like a digital photograph. There we go. There. I think we got it, sir. So if I do a quick before and after, so this is before. Okay. And this is after. I like it. Again, this is another good image, something that you can surely print out and send to your daughter, and yeah, get back out there and shoot some more of them. All right. So folks, that is going to do it for this week's episode. Hey, thank you all for sending in that feedback. Thank you to you, Mr. David, for sending that in and sending those images. I hope this was a helpful session for you this week on the show. I really do appreciate the support of you following along all the way back from episode 1, when I actually broke down, hey, what is a DSLR? What is a mirrorless camera and exposure triangle? So yeah, I really do appreciate you taking the time and going back and listening to all of those shows and getting your photography learning on. So folks, hey, continue to send your feedback, continue to send your images for image critiques or suggestions, or if you thoughts, what have you, questions, send them on in. Just shoot an email to hop@twit.tv and I'll answer them as soon as I can. I'm still behind, but I am answering them as fast as I can. And if you have images sent to me that you would love to have discussed on the show, please mention so in your in the email that I have your consent to show your images and emails on the show. All right. Okay, folks. Again, give me a holler over on social media. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. On Twitter, I am Ant_Pruitt. Give me a follow over on Instagram too, Ant_Pruitt. Trying to boost up my follower count on Instagram. I appreciate y'all doing that over there for me. And yeah, that's going to do it. Give us a shout over on the website. Leave us a rating, comments, reviews, all that good stuff. If you're using Apple Podcast or Spotify or Pocket Cast or whatever podcast application you're using, leave me a comment there just to help push us up in the ratings and help more folks discover the show. Or again, as I said before, just go to our website, twit.tv/hop. That's twit.tv/HOP for hands-on photography. Shout out to all of you for the continued support. Shout out to my man, Mr. Victor, for everything he does for me in this show to help me look and sound good each and every week. All right, we're going to get on up out of here, folks. Thank you all again. We will see you next time here on the show. Now, safely create and dominate. Y'all take care. Hey, it's time for the annual TWiT audience survey. The annual survey helps us understand our audience so we can make your listening experience even better. It'll only take a few minutes. Just head on over to twit.tv/survey22 and take it today. Thanks.